Guys of a Certain Age is brought to you by no one. Absolutely no one. Except these dudes walking down memory lane. Now let's head to the studio to see what they misremember next.
It's a podcast where two is greater than three, especially when one is gallivanting across the country. It's Guys of a Certain Age, Robbie Copeland's in studio alongside
Jay Reed.
Hello, Jay Reed. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, one day,
well,
I'm doing okay. One day, maybe Art will take us on his various journeys across America.
Well, I mean, and you too. I mean, Art and I didn't get to go to the Sphere. You and I didn't get to go to Charleston.
Yeah.
So, and I don't go to any cool places.
I may be going back to Vegas. That's to be determined here in the next probably 4 hours. And then got a Chicago trip coming up, so which will be fun. Well, it'll be fun for me, but not necessarily for my wife. So, but
I have Youngsville, North Carolina is coming up, and then Gatlinburg. So kind of didn't. I don't know. It'll be great trips, but the destinations are not new. How about we leave it like that?
What's in Youngstown?
Youngsville is where my son lives.
Oh, gotcha.
He's graduating from seminary in just a few weeks.
All right, there you go. So any cool food places?
There are actually quite a few. There's we went to a chicken and waffles place in Durham last time that was really good, and I've got my eyes set on a soul food restaurant, Mama Dips, in Chapel Hill. I met one of the proprietors of that a few weeks ago, and I'm excited about that. So yeah, there's tons of food around there. Yeah,
tons of food around there.
Tons of good food around there.
Okay, because there's tons of food everywhere.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of good places. Because you got Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Cary, Durham. I mean, it's the Research Triangle all there. A lot of big cities and a lot of good food. Ashley Christensen's there. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Who's there?
Ashley Christensen.
Who's that?
She is a chef of quite renown. That sentence didn't make much sense, but she is a renowned Southern chef in the area. She's got several different restaurants.
Okay, cool.
Nice person, good chef, all around good experience.
You really are a food fanboy, aren't you?
Totally.
Yeah,
I don't try to hide that.
Yeah, I mean, you would leave everything if you could be a professional food critic. You'd stop everything.
I would definitely give it a go, but you're right about the fanboy thing. I get more nervous, like if I saw, what's his name? We're going to talk about Star Trek later. The guy that plays Pike.
Anson Mount.
If I saw Anson Mount, I would be excited. I might be a little nervous. But when I go to meetings of food things and I see chefs and food writers that I know, I get goofy. So I go total fanboy. I say things that I think maybe shouldn't have said that, not because they were wrong or whatever, just because it makes me, look fanboy. But yeah, I love it.
Are you a Wolfgang Puck fan?
I know who he is. I don't know that I'm a fan. I've never really watched him, and
he's one of
he's familiar to me.
Yeah.
Now, Southern chefs I know better probably than aside from names.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's jump into some Geeks of the Week. One of my geeks is going to be a little food related, but what have you got in your massive list of stuffs?
Well, I saw this the other day. I didn't expect it, but there's another Ghostbusters movie coming out, and it is called, I should have pulled it up, but it's called Frozen. Let me get it up because I didn't. We jumped right into this recording super fast today.
Frozen Empire?
Frozen Empire, yep. So that's all I need to know. Frozen Empire. And I can't, from the credits, it looks sort of like a mix, like it might be a little more serious, but it's still got Dan Aykroyd. It's got Paul Rudd, who I guess is the new Ghostbusters guy. And then another actor that Oswalt.
Patton
Oswalt, yes. So it looks like a fun cast. It's got some kids in it. I think it'll be good. But I realized just the other day that I hadn't seen the most recent one that came out that we were,
Yeah, the original Ghostbusters was the last one I saw. I had never saw 2, or there was a Ghostbusters 3, right, with the original cast?
Yeah, and then you had the
reboot.
Yeah, with Melissa McCarthy and those.
Then you had another Ghostbusters that was.
There was one in between. There was one right before this that was kind of up amongst COVID and all
and
that.
it was the original. It picked up where the original storyline left off. So
at least they got the thread of. I mean, Aykroyd's still involved. He's the common thread. So I'm gonna try to watch the one that's already out soon, and then catch the other one when it comes out.
I'm watching the trailer even as you speak, and it looks like it's a combination of Ghostbusters and The Day After Tomorrow.
It did have that sort of vibe, yeah.
Yeah, with frozen things, and it's got what's his face from Stranger Things, Wolfgang, isn't his name?
You're asking. I'm struggling with names today already.
Yeah,
and I didn't finish Stranger Things. So
you didn't finish Stranger Things?
No, just this first season.
Wow, you're missing out on good stuff.
I'm so behind in so many things, but I did catch up on one thing, which we'll discuss.
We'll talk that in a little bit. So yeah, this looks pretty fascinating. I probably won't watch it, but it still looks fascinating. So
well, I don't know that I'll go to the theater to see it, so maybe a year before I actually see it.
Yeah, we'll see where it shows up on. So a new Ghostbusters. That's kind of wow. How many times?
Who'd have thunk that would be still going after all this time?
How many times can you go back to the well? I guess is the question.
We'll soon know.
Yeah, so it's coming soon, so we don't know when it's coming out. So, but it's going to be soon whenever it is coming out. So, anyway, well, cool beans. Anything else on your geek corner?
Well, the only other thing that I thought we should mention, if it's not your geek, is that it appears the actors' strike is over.
I think over as of midnight last night as we record.
Okay.
So, yeah, finally. So, folks who actually do a lot of work that have nothing to do with actors or writers can put their lives back together.
I thought about that. I mean, how many other people it affected?
A tremendous amount of people.
And do they have their own guilds, and are they going to benefit from this at all?
They might be a guild member, but no. Oh, they're not a guild member. It's a union, No, probably won't. And those people, those below the line people, have been basically without work for 6 to 8 months. And, I've kind of gotten tired of the, actors are unfairly treated thing. When you work as a production assistant on a set that's supposed to go 10 hours, that pushes to 12 or 14. And you don't get any overtime. You don't get a sleep allowance or anything like that. It's like, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy. So there's a lot of craft people from camera operators to sound people to craft services, production assistants. A lot of people who've depended upon these two guilds, or three guilds, because we're talking about the motion pictures producers, the guild that has been struck against. A lot of people have lost a lot of work, and there's probably going to be a drain of people away who've gotten other jobs that, whether they're working at a Starbucks or somewhere else, that are actually providing for their families, and they may not enter back into the production field, and I can't blame them a bit.
Yeah, same thing kind of happened, when COVID hit. People didn't go to work and ended up working for themselves or finding other things and didn't go back. And so there's a lot of, as an employer yourself, there's a lot of shortages. We have the same number of people pretty much, but for some reason we can't fill all the positions because people have moved on.
That's a whole different story for a different time.
Certainly, yeah, for sure.
I'm going to jump into my geek, which I think is pretty fascinating. So Star Trek Enterprise was the last of the broadcast Star Trek series to drop, and it's close to 20 years old at this point. So it happened after Voyager. It happened after Deep Space Nine and The Next Generation. And Enterprise went back to the first Starship Enterprise before Starfleet was formed. It was a pseudo Starfleet, but before the Federation of Planets. And it was a pretty good show. I enjoyed it. It got raised pretty bad by Star Trek fans at times.
You said it was the last broadcast show.
That's right.
Meaning like on a network?
Yeah, it was syndicated out. So It was on, I don't know if UPN was still going, United Paramount Network at that point, because when UPN launched as the fifth broadcast network, and this would have been somewhere around 95. They used Star Trek Voyager as the show to launch the network because there was a big fandom of Star Trek at that point. But I believe it was syndicated to broadcast television as well. So, but the point being, Enterprise ran for 4 seasons, and it's gotten a lot more love recently. And there's speculation we may see some Enterprise characters show up in Strange New Worlds as Strange New Worlds goes forward, because Strange New Worlds takes place 100 years or so after the events of Enterprise. Anyway, 20 years ago, there was an episode called Shuttle Pod 1, and Connor Trenier and Dominic Keating were the two primaries in that. Connor was the chief engineer, and Connor was the first officer pilot, and Dominic was the engineer. And it was basically a bottle episode. It took place in a shuttle pod, one of the critically acclaimed episodes from Star Trek Enterprise. And it kind of cemented their chemistry as friends. And then they became really close friends as real people because they worked so close on this episode. Anyway, those two cats launched a podcast last year called Shuttle Pod, the Shuttle Pod Show. Okay. And so what I thought, and I've not listened to an episode, but it could be a lot of fun. Anyway, they did a table read of Shuttle Pod 1 on their podcast, which would be a lot of fun. It'd be fun to watch the episode and then do the table read. And so anyway, that has dropped. You can find that. Actually, I'm looking at this. So the Shuttle Pod 1, they recorded the episode back, in early 22. But today, as we record, is the 20th anniversary of the episode. Okay. Anyway, they have re-released that episode of Shuttle Pod 1, and I think I'm going to watch the episode on Paramount and then go listen to it.
So it's on Paramount Plus?
Yeah, Enterprise is on Paramount Plus. The podcast is wherever you get any typical podcast from. But Shuttle Pod 1, these two cats who are, pretty prominent on the show are kind of reliving, rewatching. And so if you enjoy Star Trek Enterprise, you should hit up the Shuttle Pod 1.
So do you know if their podcast is entirely about Star Trek?
Yeah, I believe it is. I believe it's Star Trek. It's Star Trek themed, not just Enterprise, because they're they're pretty prominent in the Star Trek universe. So they've got access to people, both from the show and from their show and from others. So, but doing a live table read of one of their episodes, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is.
So, I mean, you may not like the idea of a table read. Have you ever done a table read for anything, Jack?
I have not.
I wonder how many table reads Art's done with his, prolific community theater career.
I'm sure he's done a few.
Yeah, table reads are pretty interesting because it's really the point where actors get to interact with their castmates, bring a bit of drama to it. For writers, you get to see or hear, rather, does the dialogue work? Does the banter work? It gives the director ideas of how to direct the actors for dynamic, for content. So table reads are a lot of fun. I've seen bits and pieces through the years of Doctor Who table reads, West Wing table reads, but apparently table reads aren't that big of a deal anymore. In the interest of getting TV shows and streaming shows cutting out the door, there's not a lot of shows that do table reads.
I feel like I saw a part of one when the last Star Wars trilogy came, when Harrison Ford and others came back. I remember seeing a picture, maybe even hearing a little bit about it. So that I don't know that I really knew it was a thing much before that.
Well, I think table reads are, just for the big glamours. So then there's folks like us, I guess. So
we do a table read every week.
We do a table
without a script.
We do a table ramble.
Table ramble. I like that.
We do a table ramble.
Let's syndicate that. Let's copyright that.
Yeah, table ramble. That should be our podcast without Art. is
Hashtag Table Ramble.
Table Ramble. Man, I may have to go secure that domain.
There you go.
That's pretty fun. So, all right, we're going to head into the break. We're going to talk Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. Jay has finally seen it. Then he's got some potpourri in his magical Notebook of Doom. Up next. We're back. So is Jay with 2 notebooks, a regular book, some cards. No, that's just cards, right? I mean, that's not another notebook.
Yeah, pick one. I'm going to see if I can guess it.
Oh, man. Good grief. You always bring so much stuff. So.
I brought too much. Some of this has nothing to do with the podcast. It's just my daily list of to-do things.
Yeah. Have you ever tried an electronic list manager?
They don't work.
They don't work for you.
Well,
so, I mean, so you need to be able to write down.
I like
scribble.
paper and pens. I do use some electronic media for some things, but just on a day-to-day, I like to be able to cross it off with my
See, I use Rocket
G2 pen.
I like Rocket books for that exact reason, because I can write it, then I can scan it, saves a PDF to my Dropbox, and then I can erase it and start over.
Okay.
Yeah, Rocket books are really cool. Now you've got to have a specific type of pen. It's an erasable pen that works on it. But yeah, man, Rocket books are cool.
I've heard of that, actually.
Yeah, I think it was a geek one time.
Might have been.
I've been using Rocket books for 6, 7, 8 years, something like that.
Oh, wow.
They predate the podcast. So, all right, Jay, I'm going to welcome you to the world of those of us who watch Strange New Worlds. So it's the Strange Jay world with Star Trek watching behind you. So
finally,
so what have you watched? You watched both seasons so far?
Watched both seasons. Yeah, I finished like the last episode last night.
All right. So general impressions.
Overall, I mean, you have some of that, recent factor.
Recency bias.
Recency bias. I knew there was a word. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm liking this one more than even, what I've seen Marvel and Star Wars as far as streaming series go.
Really?
Yeah, I really liked it.
It may be my favorite Star Trek.
Yeah, and I haven't watched all the other Star Treks. I watched the original when I was growing up, but I didn't, and I've just watched bits and pieces of the other. So this is the first one that I've watched, straight through, probably ever. I don't know, who knows how many episodes I watched of the original series when it was going on, and I was a big fan then, but that in that day you watched it when it came on, and if you could, and now obviously you can sit down and binge or keep up with what you've seen and all that. So this may be the first full Star Wars series I've ever watched. Gosh. Delete. First Star Trek I've seen from beginning to end, and I thought it was great. I mean, for a lot of reasons.
I think the writing's really tight. It's a lot of fun. The cast is fabulous. Art is very, very fond of the original show. Like, I'm really fond of classic Doctor Who, which, if you don't have the affection for it, the warts show pretty. They're pretty prevalent. And so I know that Art really, really likes the original series, and it was groundbreaking, and there was some great stuff there. But man, and I'm a Next Generation fan. I really enjoyed, especially seasons 3 through 6, 7 of Next Generation. I'm just having a hard time putting anything above Strange New Worlds because of the cast chemistry, because of the effects are modern, updated.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Well, and I think that's what all those things, the good writing, the cast, and the fun side of it, they've been able to package that together in an amazing way. So you don't feel like you're watching a comedy, but there's laughs, and you don't feel like you're watching a cooking show, but there's food. I mean, that's maybe a stretch, but I noticed those things when Captain Pike is in his apron and is in his room and cooking and talking about some certain basil that the doctor gives him, or parsley maybe. Yeah, a certain kind of parsley, and he says, "Be careful, don't use too much. It's toxic." He goes, "Oh, it needs a touch." That kind of stuff. It was just a good range.
Yeah.
Without taking it too far over the top, funny. and you have some super serious stuff. I mean, gosh, the last episode, the cliffhanger and all that, just his face, it just stuff like,
yeah.
And I didn't realize it was going to be a cliffhanger till a couple minutes before. I'm like, this is way too much building up for 2 minutes to be left in this episode.
So there was probably one of the greatest cliffhangers of all television shows was it was Star Trek season 3, the final episode of that season where they end up fighting the Borg. Picard gets assimilated by the Borg, and he's attacking the Federation. Okay. And, Picard in his Borg outfit looks into the, camera, which is on the bridge of the Enterprise, saying, resistance is futile, number one. And it's like, oh, crap, what have you done? And they cut to black, to be continued. So Best of Both Worlds Part 1, then Part 2 was great. And that's what kicked off the season. I think that kicked off, obviously, Season 4. And I think that's where Star Trek Next Generation became its own thing. And this Gorn cliffhanger is pretty fascinating. One of the things that they have, I want to see how they get themselves out of the painted corner they're in. And Art could address this a little bit, but in the original series, Kirk encounters a Gorn for the first time. So the original series takes place temporally after Strange New Worlds, and so they've never seen a adult Gorn. So how does that reconcile with canon? So that's going to be pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So
one of the things I really liked, and of course, this was y'all had told me about the musical episode. And played me a clip, and I realized when I watched that one, I went back and like, what are other musical episodes and non-musical? And apparently, there's been a lot more. I've seen a few.
Yeah.
More. There was more out there than I realized. But number one, I love the music. I just thought it was incredibly well done.
Yes.
And they also brought it into the story in a way that didn't make it sound too silly. I mean, you could see they were having fun and that it wasn't, a typical kind of a thing. But they gave it a reason, and the music was terrific.
Yeah.
And I even wondered, I'm thinking they probably, it wasn't like Les Mis when they sang live, but because Nurse Chapel especially, I was like, she's not singing that. But then when I looked it up, everybody pretty much sang their own stuff, and then amazing voices. I mean, crazy good.
Yeah.
So that was one of my favorites. The one where they brought in the Lower Decks characters.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I thought, okay, well, they've talked about this. I'm not surprised by this, but how are they going to handle this? And I thought they handled it really well.
Brilliantly.
They didn't try to explain away the cartoon. It was just there, and the Mr. What's his name, Quaid, and the other actress that was working with him. I just thought they did a terrific job of they were doing fanboy. And they, that was part of the whole plot. But I thought they just did a great job of blending that. And you're like, oh, okay, now that's a cartoon. But I think if they'd have tried to explain that away, it would have taken away from it.
Yeah.
They just, they became live when they went through that portal, and all of a sudden, and I know, it was great.
Yeah.
So that's just 2 episodes that I thought kind of represent the whole series.
Yeah.
Of how they took things that, were just fun little crossovers or whatever, but made them work.
What do you think about Ethan Peck as Spock?
I really thought he did a good job of being himself while at the same time reflecting Nimoy's character.
Yeah.
So he didn't go too far off to make you think, well, this is not really Spock. But he was enough of himself in the modern Enterprise or whatever to be his own character as well.
I think you had Zachary Quinto and the Kelvin Timeline rebooted J.J. Abrams movies to play Spock, and I thought he did good. Ethan Peck is just, I think, phenomenal as Spock, and I think he captures he comes closer to the feel of what Leonard Nimoy had than maybe Quinto did. It's interesting the take on a variety of the characters. Jess Bush as Nurse Chapel. That was the...
and I wasn't familiar with her from the original one.
So she was played by Majel Barrett, who was... King
Roddenberry's wife.
That's right. And she was also the voice of the computer.
Right.
So I love what they've done with her. The character...
I would call her a pivotal character.
Oh, she absolutely
because
is.
of her relationship with Spock, because of her... I mean, she's in... all of them are in every episode, but she is a major player.
Celia Gooding is doing an amazing job as Uhura, as a young Uhura. And, everybody's great. Everybody's great. I love Ortega's, Melissa Navia.
Yes.
And, and Anson Mount, I'm a big Anson Mount fan, and he may be my favorite Star Trek captain. I mean, he's fun, he's serious, he's got that leadership quality to him. Of course, we're talking about...
And he's a little renegade.
He's a little renegade. What about Paul Wesley as Captain Kirk? Well, at some point, Captain Kirk.
Yeah. I enjoy his character. He's definitely got that... it's hard for me to envision him becoming William Shatner in a way, but he does seem to have that, that little spark of whatever Kirk has, whatever you call it. Yeah. Now the brother, I don't know much about his character.
He shows up in one, if I remember correctly, he showed up in one episode of the original series. And it was played by Shatner with a mustache on.
I think I read that somewhere.
And so having Sam Kirk with a mustache on, and he does look like Paul Wesley. It's Dan Jeanette, I can't pronounce his name, who is, he does resemble Paul Wesley in real life.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny. So, did you find that you could jump into this thing without having to know a ton of backstory?
Yeah. Like I said, I only knew, I've learned a lot from listening to y'all talk about the different series along the way. And I watched the other one as a child. I've got figurines and I've got an Enterprise playset.
They're not figurines, they're action figures.
Action figures. I have action figures, and I have a set with where I can beam people up and down or around. And so I was definitely a fan. So I think it did help for me to know who the characters were for the most part. I mean, obviously La'an and a few of the others are new, but having that Uhura and Spock, and gosh, I loved Scotty coming in.
Yeah.
And another one of my favorites is, and I can't remember her actress's name, but the one who plays the engineer in the second season that was in the she's a Lidite or
Carol Kane.
Carol Kane, yeah, she's like 1,000 years old or whatever, and she's hilarious.
Yeah,
she's great.
She absolutely is.
I mean, I don't know if that's a character they brought in new or if somebody that's in canon or not.
I'm not familiar with her, to be honest with you. So, I think she's brand new.
Yeah, and Himmer was
I loved
really
Himmer.
cool. And I was reading that the guy who played Himmer played the primary Klingon in the music episode.
In the Bad Boy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I mean that I can't think of anybody I don't like.
Yeah,
really. I mean, in all that.
So, are you interested in watching, say, Lower Decks or other Star Trek pieces because of what they've done?
I might watch some Lower Decks. I don't know that I'm gonna jump into that full feed. Yeah. But I'd give it a go. Yeah, I'd definitely give it a go.
Yeah, I would avoid probably Discovery because it can't figure out what it wants to be. And I was pretty disappointed with it. Picard season 1 and 2 were okay. Season 3 was really good. Okay. And there's there seems to be talk of a Star Trek Legacy spinoff with 7 of 9 being captain of the Enterprise and a few other characters coming back in. So, but we'll see what happens.
And when does season 3? It's already on my IMDb, but it doesn't have any dates.
Yeah,
it says 2024.
I would think that now that the writers have been probably writing since they got back to work, it would probably not go into production until early next year. I would think.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, it's a big bummer. So we're going to start feeling the entertainment gap probably in 6 months or so of stuff that should have been written and shot and ready to roll out in early or mid 2024.
Well, maybe we can have some more episodes of me catching up to things that I
haven't
had time to watch because there won't be as much new coming out. I think I'm about a week behind in Loki right now, even that's just once a week. So
yeah. So, all right, that'll do us this time. Maybe Art will find his way back to us. Maybe not. Stay tuned. Find out. We'll see you next time around.